Admiral Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of the Hughes Valkyrie. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The ship was huge, bigger than any building back on Earth. It was humanity's strongest warship, and Jake was proud to command it. The bridge was busy today. Officers sat at their stations, watching screens full of numbers and star maps. The ship moved through space at incredible speed, but inside everything felt calm and quiet. Jake liked it this way. A good ship should run smoothly. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan sat at the communications desk. She had been working the night shift for 3 months now. Her job was to listen for signals from other human ships or colonies. Most nights, she heard nothing but the empty noise of Space Dot, but tonight was different. Kate's screen started flashing red. She put on her headphones and listened carefully. At first, she thought it was just another false signal. Space was full of strange noises that sounded like voices, but were really just radiation from distant stars. Then she heard it clearly. A human voice, speaking Earth's standard language. "Admiral," Kate called out. Her voice was shaking a little. "You need to hear this." Jake walked over to her station. He could see the worry on her face. Kate had been doing this job for 5 years. She did not get excited easily. "What is it?" Jake asked. Kate played the recording. The voice was weak and full of static, but the words were clear enough. "This is Commander Lisa Vale of the human colony ship New Horizon. We followed the ancient star maps and found paradise, but paradise became hell. The Vorth Collective has enslaved our people. We are dying. If anyone can hear this, please help us." The bridge went silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing and stared at Kate's station. Jake felt his heart beating faster. The New Horizon was a legend. The ship had left Earth 300 years ago during the first great wave of human expansion. It carried 50,000 colonists to find new worlds beyond the galaxy. Everyone thought the ship was lost forever. Where did this signal come from? Jake asked. Kate checked her instruments. Her face went pale. "Sir, according to the readings, this signal came from the Andromeda Galaxy." Captain Ben Carter, Jake's second in command, walked over quickly. Ben was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had been fighting in space for 20 years. "That's impossible," Ben said. "Andromeda is 2.5 million light-years away. No signal could travel that far. Unless they used the precursor network," said Dr. Amy Brooks. She was the ship's chief scientist, a small woman with wild red hair who understood things that made Jake's head hurt. Amy pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy. Points of light showed the ancient relay stations left behind by a race that disappeared long ago. Humans had found these stations and learned to use them, but they still did not understand how they worked. The precursors built quantum relays that can send messages instantly across impossible distances, Amy explained. If the New Horizon found a relay in Andromeda, they could send the signal back to our galaxy. Jake studied the star map. The relay network only covered the Milky Way galaxy. But maybe, just maybe, the precursors had built more than humans knew about. "How old is this signal?" he asked. Kate ran the numbers through her computer. "Sir, the quantum signature suggests this message was sent recently, maybe a few days ago." "That means they are still alive," Ben said quietly. Jake nodded. He walked to the center of the bridge and stared out at the stars through the main window. Somewhere out there, beyond all those lights, human beings were crying for help. He thought about the 50,000 people who had left Earth so long ago. They were pioneers, brave men and women who wanted to find new homes among the stars. They had families, children, dreams of building something better. Now they were slaves. Jake had sworn an oath when he became an admiral. He promised to protect all human beings, no matter where they were. It did not matter if they were on Earth, on Mars, or on the other side of the universe. Amy, he said, can we reach Andromeda? The scientist looked worried. Theoretically, yes, but it would require every ship we have and all our experimental jump drives. The power requirements alone would be enormous. What about the risks? Extreme. We would be traveling through completely unknown space. No one has ever attempted an intergalactic journey. We might not survive the trip. Jake was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his wife back on Earth, about the millions of people depending on the fleet to protect the home galaxy. If he took the ships to Andromeda, Earth would be less defended. But then he thought about Lisa Vale and her people, trapped and dying in a distant galaxy. Ben, send a message to all ship captains. I want them aboard the Valkyrie in 2 hours for an emergency meeting. Sir, what should I tell them? Tell them we have a rescue mission. 2 hours later, the conference room was full of the fleet's best officers. Captain Danny Clark of the cruiser Phoenix sat next to Captain Lisa Morgan of the destroyer Thunderbolt. Major Ryan Hayes, commander of the Marine Forces, listened carefully as Jake explained the situation. The New Horizon colony is under attack by something called the Vorth Collective, Jake said. We don't know what that means, but we know our people need help. Captain Clark raised his hand. Sir, with respect, how do we know this signal is real? It could be a trap. It could be, Jake agreed, but the voice patterns match human speech perfectly. The ship's identification codes are correct. And the quantum signature is consistent with precursor technology. Captain Morgan spoke up. Even if it's real, sir, how can we possibly help them? Andromeda is impossibly far away. Dr. Brooks stood up and activated the holographic projector. A three-dimensional map of space appeared, showing both galaxies. We have been working on experimental jump drives that can fold space-time, she said. By creating artificial wormholes, we can travel vast distances almost instantly. The technology is new and dangerous, but it might work. How dangerous? Asked Major Hayes. We could lose ships. We could lose the entire fleet. And if we succeed in reaching Andromeda, we would be cut off from Earth. The journey back would take just as long. The room was quiet. Jake looked at each officer's face. He could see fear, but he could also see determination. I won't order anyone to come, Jake said finally. This is volunteer only. Anyone who wants to stay behind and protect Earth can do so with honor. Captain Clark stood up. Sir, I volunteer the Phoenix and her crew. One by one, every officer in the room stood up. Within minutes, Jake had volunteers for the largest rescue mission in human history. Very well, Jake said. We leave in 48 hours. Start preparing your ships for the longest journey any human has ever attempted. As the officers filed out, Ben stayed behind. Jake, are you sure about this? Jake looked out the window at the stars again. Somewhere among those distant lights, human beings were waiting for help that might never come. We don't leave our people behind, Ben. Not ever. The human fleet left Earth on a cold Tuesday morning. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Valkyrie and watched his home planet grow smaller in the rear display. Behind him flew the largest war fleet humanity had ever assembled. 12 massive dreadnoughts, 37 cruisers, and over 200 support ships, all heading into the unknown darkness between galaxies. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker monitored the fleet's progress from his station. His job was to track every ship and make sure none fell behind. The experimental jump drives were untested for such a long journey. If a ship's drive failed, it could be lost forever in the empty space between stars. Fleet status report, Jake called out. All ships maintaining formation, sir, Steve replied. Jump drives operating at 92% efficiency. We should reach the first waypoint in 6 hours. Dr. Amy Brooks had planned their route carefully. The journey to Andromeda would take them through 12 major jumps, each one longer than any human ship had ever attempted. They would leap from one precursor beacon to another, using the ancient network to guide them across impossible distances. The first jump went smoothly. The fleet disappeared from normal space in a flash of blue light and reappeared near the edge of the Milky Way galaxy. But as they moved further from home, problems began to appear. Captain Danny Clark was the first to report trouble. His cruiser, Phoenix, developed a crack in its jump drive housing during the third leap. Chief Engineer Kelly Rodriguez worked for 6 hours to repair the damage while the fleet waited. The drives weren't built for this kind of stress, Kelly told Jake over the communication system. Her voice sounded tired and worried. We're pushing them far beyond their design limits. I don't know how long they'll hold up. Jake made the hard decision to continue. They had come too far to turn back now. The fourth jump was worse. 3 ships suffered drive failures. The destroyer Comet lost power completely and had to be towed by the dreadnought Titan. The medical ship, Hope, developed a fuel leak that took 8 hours to fix. But the real problem started in the 5th week of their journey. The space between galaxies was darker than anyone had imagined. No stars, no planets, no light, except what came from their own ships. The crew began to feel the weight of absolute emptiness pressing down on them. Counselor Nina Walsh noticed the changes first. People stopped talking during meals. They stared out windows at the black void for hours. Some crew members reported nightmares about being lost forever in the darkness. It's the isolation, Nina explained to Jake. Humans need familiar reference points. We're designed to live under a sun, to see stars in the night sky. Out here, there's nothing, just emptiness. The psychological problems got worse during the 6th week. Petty Officer Gary Thompson locked himself in his quarters and refused to come out. He kept saying the darkness was trying to get inside his head. 3 other crew members reported similar fears. Jake ordered all non-essential crew to stay away from the observation windows. He increased the artificial lighting throughout the ship and asked Nina to organize group activities to keep people's minds busy. But even Jake felt the pressure. Sometimes he would wake up in the middle of the night and forget where he was. The silence was so complete it made his ears ring. He would lie in his bed and wonder if they were the only living things in all of existence. During the 7th week, disaster struck. Lieutenant Troy Gibson was monitoring the communication systems when he picked up an emergency signal from the dreadnought Hercules. Captain Lisa Morgan's voice came through, filled with panic. All ships, this is Hercules. We have a massive drive failure. Repeat, massive drive failure. We're losing power to all systems. Jake watched in horror as the Hercules fell out of formation. The massive warship's lights flickered and went dark. 8,000 crew members were trapped inside a dead ship in the middle of nowhere. All ships, emergency stop, Jake ordered. Prepare rescue shuttles immediately. The fleet dropped out of jump space and rushed to help the Hercules. Captain Ben Carter led the rescue operation, while Kelly Rodriguez tried to figure out what had gone wrong. The exotic matter containment system collapsed, Kelly reported. The jump drive literally ate itself from the inside. The ship is dead. In space, it took 3 days to evacuate everyone from the Hercules. They had to abandon the ship in the dark void, leaving behind one of humanity's most powerful warships. The rescued crew was divided among the remaining vessels, making the other ships more crowded. Morale hit rock bottom. People began to whisper that the mission was cursed, that they would all die in the darkness between galaxies. Some crew members asked to be put into suspended sleep rather than face the endless journey awake. Jake called a fleet-wide meeting using the communication system. Every person in the fleet could hear his voice. "I know you're scared," he said. "I'm scared too. We're further from home than any human has ever been. We've lost friends, and we might lose more before this is over. But I want you to remember why we're here." He paused, thinking about the desperate voice they had heard so many weeks ago. Somewhere ahead of us, human beings are suffering. They've been waiting for help for 300 years. They don't know we're coming. They probably think they've been forgotten. But they're wrong. We haven't forgotten them. We'll never forget them. Jake's voice grew stronger. We are the rescue fleet. We are the answer to their prayers. And no amount of darkness, no broken ships, no fear will stop us from reaching them. We don't leave our people behind. The speech helped, but it was what happened next that really saved the fleet's morale. 2 days later, Troy Gibson picked up another transmission. This one was recent, broadcast just hours earlier on the same frequency as the original distress. Call. This is Lieutenant Colonel Helen Price, commanding the resistance in Sector 7. We've held out longer than anyone thought possible, but the Vorth are tightening their grip. The mining camps are expanding, and they're taking our children. Now, we've heard rumors of a signal sent to the old world, but we know no help is coming. We're alone out here. The message spread through the fleet like electricity. The colonists were still alive. They were still fighting, and they needed help more than ever. "All ships," Jake announced. "We just received proof that our people are still alive and still fighting. Double all repair efforts. Reduce rations if necessary to save fuel. We're going to reach them, and we're going to save them." The effect was immediate. Crew members who had been depressed and frightened suddenly found new energy. Engineers worked around the clock to repair damaged systems. Officers recalculated their route to save time and fuel. Chief Engineer Rodriguez managed to modify the remaining jump drives to run more efficiently. She borrowed parts from the abandoned Hercules before they left it behind, using them to strengthen the other ships. Dr. Brooks discovered a way to link multiple ships together during jumps, allowing the stronger vessels to help pull the weaker ones through space. It was dangerous, but it reduced the strain on individual drives. By the 10th week, the fleet was moving faster than ever before. They had lost one ship and faced countless problems, but they were still going, still pushing forward into the unknown. Lieutenant Commander Parker watched the star charts as they approached the final waypoint. Soon they would make the last jump into Andromeda Galaxy. After months of traveling through empty darkness, they would finally see alien stars. "Admiral," he called out, "we're approaching the final jump point. All ships report ready for Galactic insertion." Jake looked around the bridge at his tired crew. They had endured more than any human expedition in history. They had crossed the void between galaxies and survived. "Very well," he said. "Signal all ships. Prepare for final jump to Andromeda Galaxy. Let's go get our people." The human fleet burst out of jump space into the Andromeda Galaxy with flashes of blue light. Admiral Jake Morrison felt his heart racing as he stared at the alien stars through the main window. After months of traveling through empty darkness, seeing stars again felt like coming back to life, but the moment of wonder did not last long. "Admiral, we're picking up massive energy signatures," Lieutenant Kate Sullivan called out from her station. "Multiple contacts all around us." The main screen filled with red dots. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They were moving in perfect formation, surrounding the human fleet like a trap. "Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force." Jake broadcast on all frequencies. "We come in peace. We are here to rescue human colonists." The response came immediately, but it was not words. It was weapons fire. Bright green beams of energy slammed into the human ships. The U's Valkyrie shook violently as its shields absorbed the impact. Warning alarms rang throughout the bridge. "All ships, battle stations," Jake ordered. "Return." Fire. The space around them exploded into chaos. The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Missiles, plasma cannons, and particle beams lit up the darkness. But their weapons seemed to do very little damage to the alien ships. Captain Ben Carter studied the enemy vessels on his screen. They were unlike anything in the human databases. Black triangular shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with impossible speed and precision. "Sir, our weapons are having minimal effect," reported Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker. "The enemy shields are adapting to our fire. Each shot does less damage than the last." Jake watched in horror as the destroyer Comet took a direct hit. The ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal. 300 crew members died in seconds. "These must be the Vorth," Dr. Amy Brooks said quietly. "The enemies that enslaved our colonists." Commander Alex Stone led the first squadron of fighters into battle. His small ships were faster than the big warships, but they were also more fragile. The Vorth weapons tracked them with deadly accuracy. "This is Stone." His voice crackled over the radio. "The enemy is using some kind of predictive targeting system. They know where we're going to be before we get there." Jake realized they were in serious trouble. The Vorth ships were not just more advanced than human technology. They were learning. From every attack, getting better at defending themselves with each passing minute. "All ships retreat to minimum safe distance," Jake ordered. "We need to regroup and figure out how to fight these things." The human fleet pulled back, but the Vorth did not chase them. The alien ships simply formed a defensive wall and waited, as if they were playing with the humans. Back on the Valkyrie, Jake called an emergency meeting. The holographic display showed the battle damage. They had lost 3 ships in the first engagement: the Comet, the patrol ship Eagle, and the transport. Vessel Mercy were all gone. "We can't fight them with conventional weapons," Amy said. "Their technology is too advanced. They can analyze our attacks and develop counters in real time." "Then how do we win?" asked Captain Danny Clark. His ship Phoenix had taken heavy damage and was barely operational. "We don't win by being stronger," Jake said slowly. "We win by being human." Before anyone could ask what he meant, Kate Sullivan spoke up from the communications station. "Sir, I'm picking up a transmission from the planet's surface. It's on the same frequency as the distress calls." The message was scratchy and weak, but they could make out the words. "This is Major Ryan Hayes, Colonial Defense Force. We saw the battle in orbit. We don't know who you are, but thank you for trying to help us. The Vorth have enslaved our people for generations. We've been fighting them from the underground, but we're losing. If you can hear this, we're sending you our tactical data. Maybe it will help." Data flowed into the Valkyrie's computers. Star charts, enemy positions, and most importantly, information. About how the Vorth operated. Jake studied the intelligence files. The Vorth were not a single species. They were a collective machine intelligence that had conquered dozens of different races. They took the best technology from each conquered civilization and added it to their own. "Look at this," Amy said, pointing to a tactical analysis. "The Vorth use a centralized command system. All their ships are connected to a main control network. That's how they coordinate so perfectly. It's also their weakness," Jake realized. "If we can disrupt their network, we can break their coordination. But the files also contain darker information. The human colonies were spread across multiple star systems, all under Vorth control. The colonists worked as slaves in massive mining operations. Those who resisted were killed or sent to punishment camps." Jake read about Lieutenant Colonel Helen Price, who had been fighting the Vorth for 20 years. Her resistance movement had saved thousands of lives, but they were running out of time and resources. We need to make contact with the resistance, Jake decided. If we can coordinate with them, we might have a chance. Getting to the planet's surface would not be easy. The Vorth controlled the orbital space around every human colony. Any ship that tried to land would be destroyed immediately. Commander Stone volunteered to lead a stealth mission. Using a modified scout ship, his team would try to sneak past the Vorth defenses and reach the resistance fighters. The ship's been equipped with the best stealth technology we have, Chief Engineer Kelly Rodriguez explained. But it's not perfect. You'll have maybe 10 minutes on the surface before they detect you. Stone's team launched in the middle of the night cycle when the Vorth seemed less active. The small ship slipped through the outer defenses and descended toward the planet's surface. The world below had once been beautiful. Jake could see the remains of human cities and farms, but now it was covered with massive mining operations. Huge. Machines stripped away mountains and forests, leaving behind ugly scars in the earth. Stone's ship landed in a remote valley where the resistance was hiding. The team had barely stepped outside when armed figures emerged from the rocks and trees. "I'm Colonel Helen Price," said the leader, a woman with gray hair and hard eyes. "Are you really from Earth?" "We are," Stone replied. "We came as soon as we received your distress signal." Price looked like she might cry. "We've been waiting so long. We thought Earth had forgotten us." "Never," Stone said. "We don't leave our people behind." The resistance fighters led them to an underground base hidden in a cave system. There, Stone met with the colonial leaders and learned the full extent of the Vorth occupation. "They've taken our children," Price explained. "The young ones are easier to control. They're being trained to work in the deep mines where the radiation levels are deadly." Major Hayes showed them maps of the Vorth installations. "They have 3 main control centers in this system. If we could hit all 3 at the same time, we might be able to disrupt their coordination long enough for your fleet to attack." Stone sent the information back to Admiral Morrison. The plan was risky, but it might work. The human fleet would attack the orbital defenses while the resistance struck the ground installations. But as they prepared for the coordinated assault, the Vorth made their own move. Kate Sullivan detected massive energy buildup from the enemy ships. "Sir, they're powering up some kind of superweapon. Energy levels are off the charts." Jake watched the enemy formation change. The Vorth ships were linking together, combining their power into something much more dangerous. "All ships emergency. Dispersal," Jake ordered. "Maximum distance from enemy formation." The Vorth superweapon fired. A beam of pure energy swept across space, destroying 2 human cruisers instantly. The beam continued, striking the planet's surface and vaporizing an entire mountain range. "They're trying to kill their own slaves rather than let us rescue them," Amy said in horror. Jake felt rage building in his chest. These machines were willing to commit genocide rather than lose their prizes. They had no understanding of mercy, no concept of the value of life. "Signal all ships," Jake said. "We're going to end this. One way or another, we're going to save our people." The final battle was about to begin. The human fleet was outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the Vorth could never understand. They had the desperate courage of people fighting for their families. Jake looked at the tactical display one more time. The odds were terrible, but humans had faced terrible odds before and won. "All ships, attack formation. Let's show these machines what happens when you threaten human beings." The final battle began when Admiral Jake Morrison gave the order every human had been waiting for. "All ships, attack formation. Today we take our people home." The human fleet charged forward into the wall of Vorth ships. But this time they fought differently. Instead of trying to match the enemy's firepower, They used the one thing the machines could not predict. Pure human chaos. Captain Danny Clark's damaged cruiser Phoenix disappeared and reappeared behind the enemy formation using its jump drive. The Vorth ships turned to face this new threat, but Clark had already jumped away to a different position. Jump drive combat, Dr. Amy Brooks called it. The enemy can't track us if we don't follow normal physics. Captain Ben Carter followed Clark's example. His dreadnought Titan vanished from the center of the battle and materialized next to a Vorth command ship. The massive human warship fired everything it had at point-blank range before jumping away again. The Vorth collective tried to adapt to this new fighting style, but human unpredictability was too much for their logical systems. The machines expected patterns, but humans created chaos. On the planet's surface, Colonel Helen Price led the resistance attack on the first Vorth control center. Her fighters had been preparing for this moment for years. They knew every weakness in the enemy defenses. Remember, Price told her troops, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for our children, for our future, and for the people who came across the galaxy to help us. The resistance fighters struck with desperate fury. They used improvised weapons and suicide tactics that the Vorth could not understand. Major Ryan Hayes led a team of volunteers who drove explosive-filled vehicles directly into the control center's main power core. The explosion could be seen from orbit. The first Vorth installation went dark, and hundreds of their ships lost. Coordination. Admiral Morrison watched the tactical display as enemy formations began to break apart. Signal all ships. Focus fire on the command vessels. Without coordination, they're just individual targets. But the Vorth were not finished. The machine collective activated a backup plan that horrified everyone who saw it. Instead of trying to save their installations, they began destroying the human colonies. Sir, they're targeting civilian areas, Lieutenant Kate Sullivan reported. Energy readings show they're preparing to sterilize the entire planet. Jake felt ice in his veins. The Vorth were willing to kill millions of humans rather than let them be rescued. All ships, emergency landing protocols, Jake ordered. We're going down to the surface. We'll fight them on the ground if we have to. The human fleet broke orbit and descended toward the planet. It was incredibly dangerous. Ships were not designed to fight in atmosphere, but they had no choice. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker coordinated the landing while enemy fire rained down around them. Landing zone secured. Marines are deploying to protect the colonies. Commander Alex Stone led the first wave of ground forces. His Marines found scenes of horror in the human settlements. The Vorth had been using the colonists as slave labor for generations. Families were separated, children taken from their parents, and anyone who resisted was killed. But Stone also found something the machines had not expected. The human colonists had not broken. Despite centuries of oppression, they had maintained their humanity. When the Marines arrived, the colonists picked up whatever weapons they could find and joined the fight. This is incredible, Stone reported to Admiral Morrison. These people have been slaves for 300 years, but they're still fighting. They're still human. The battle raged across multiple star systems. The human fleet was split into smaller groups, each protecting a different colony. The Vorth tried to use their numerical advantage, but human determination made up for the odds. Young Lieutenant Danny Miller, fresh from Earth's Naval Academy, made the discovery that changed everything. He was analyzing the enemy communication patterns when he noticed something strange. Admiral, the Vorth aren't just machines, he reported. They're using biological components as well. Living brains connected to computer networks. Dr. Brooks studied Miller's data. That's how they process information so quickly. They're using the brains of conquered species as organic computers. Jake felt sick. The Vorth were not just conquerors. They were parasites that turned living beings into parts of their machine collective. Can we use this against them? Jake asked. Amy worked frantically at her station. Maybe. If we can introduce a virus that affects the biological components, we might be able to disrupt their entire network. The resistance fighters had been developing something similar. Colonel Price's scientists had been working on a biological weapon designed to target the Vorth's organic systems. We never had a way to deliver it, Price explained during a battlefield. Communication. But if your ships can get close enough to their central processing unit, we might be able to upload the virus directly. The plan was incredibly dangerous. A small team would have to get inside the main Vorth command ship and manually upload the virus. It would probably be a suicide mission. Commander Stone volunteered immediately. I'll take a team aboard there. Flagship, give us the virus and point us in the right direction. Jake wanted to refuse, but there was no other option. Stone's team prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history. Using a captured Vorth shuttle, Stone's team approached the enemy command ship. The vessel was massive, bigger than any human warship. It pulsed with alien energy and seemed to be alive. Inside, they found the truth about the Vorth Collective. The ship was filled with tanks containing the brains of conquered species. Thousands of them, all connected to a central processing unit that controlled the entire fleet. This is horrible, whispered Sergeant Lisa Taylor. They're using people as computer parts. Stone's team fought their way to the central core. The Vorth defenders were fierce, but they were predictable. The machines followed logical patterns. While humans used instinct and creativity. At the core, they found the master control unit. It was a massive brain, probably taken from some ancient species, connected to millions of processing nodes. Upload. The virus, Stone ordered. The biological weapon spread through the Vorth network like wildfire. The virus targeted the organic components, causing them to reject their machine connections. One by one, the enslaved brains broke free from Vorth control. The effect was immediate. Vorth ships across the galaxy began shutting down or turning against each other. The collective's perfect coordination collapsed into chaos. On the planet's surface, the Vorth installations went dark. The machines that had enslaved humanity for centuries simply stopped working. Colonel Price stood in the ruins of a mining camp and watched her people walk free for the first time in generations. Children who had never seen sunlight emerged from underground tunnels. Families torn apart by slavery were reunited. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. Admiral Morrison received the news aboard the Valkyrie. The Vorth Collective was destroyed. The human colonies were free. The mission that had seemed impossible was complete. But the victory came with a price. Commander Stone's team had not made it out of the Vorth command ship. They had given their lives to save millions of others. Jake stood before the memorial wall, where Stone's name had been added alongside all the others who died in the mission. The human fleet had lost thousands of brave men and women, but they had saved an entire civilization. Months later, Jake stood with Colonel Price on the observation deck of the rebuilt New Horizon colony. The world was healing. The mines were being filled in, forests were being replanted, and children were learning to play again. You came, Price said quietly. After all those years, you actually came. Jake nodded. We don't leave our people behind. Not ever. The rescue mission had become something more than anyone had imagined. Humanity now had a foothold in another galaxy. The colonies would rebuild and grow, spreading human civilization across the stars of Andromeda. Years later, historians would call it the greatest rescue mission in human history. A fleet that crossed the void between galaxies to answer a cry for help. They had faced impossible odds and won through courage, determination, and the refusal to abandon their own. The message was clear to any intelligence that might be listening. Humanity would go to any length, cross any distance, and face any enemy to protect their people. The stars themselves were not limited enough to contain the human spirit, and in the dark void between galaxies, the abandoned wreck of the U.E.'s Hercules drifted silently through space, carrying a message beacon that would broadcast for centuries. To come, we are human. We answer the call. We never leave our people behind.